Marcus Aurelius wrote his most profound thoughts while leading brutal military campaigns. Yet 90% of people can't focus for 10 minutes without checking their phones. What if the secret to reclaiming your life isn't adding more, but ruthlessly cutting away everything that doesn't serve your highest purpose? Ancient Stoics mastered this art 2,000 years ago. Right now, pause and count how many times you've checked social media today. That number reveals exactly why you're not where you want to be in life. Block 1. The discipline of desire. Why wanting less gives you more. What if your unhappiness stems not from lacking what you want, but from wanting what you lack? This isn't just philosophical wordplay. It's the foundation of human suffering and the key to liberation. Epictetus, who knew chains both literal and metaphorical, taught that freedom comes through disciplining desire, choosing what to want rather than chasing every impulse that crosses your mind. Think about your last major purchase. Before you bought it, you believed it would make you happier. How long did that satisfaction actually last? Modern neuroscience confirms what Stoics intuited. Dopamine addiction from endless wanting literally rewires your brain for dissatisfaction. Each time you get what you thought you wanted, your brain immediately recalibrates, demanding something bigger, better, newer. The average person encounters over 5,000 advertisements daily, each one designed to create artificial desires. Social media compounds this by showing curated highlights of others' lives, making your reality seem insufficient by comparison. You're essentially being programmed to be perpetually dissatisfied, always reaching for the next thing that promises fulfillment but delivers only temporary pleasure. Seneca, Rome's wealthiest advisor, discovered this truth despite having everything money could buy. He wrote, "It is not the man who has too little but the man who craves more, who is poor." This isn't about embracing poverty. It's about recognizing that contentment comes from internal alignment, not external accumulation. The Stoic practice of disciplining desire works in 3 stages. First, pause before every purchase or decision and ask, "Am I buying this thing, or is this thing buying me?" Second, practice gratitude not as positive thinking but as accurate thinking, acknowledging the abundance that already exists in your life. Third, distinguish between natural desires that serve your flourishing and artificial desires implanted by marketing. Here's what changes when you master this discipline. Decisions become clearer because you're not clouded by artificial urgency. Relationships improve because you're not constantly comparing them to unrealistic standards. Work becomes more satisfying because you're not chasing external validation. Sleep comes easier because your mind isn't churning through endless want lists. True power lies in wanting what you already have. Start each morning by listing 3 things you're grateful for before reaching for your phone. This simple practice rewires your neural pathways from scarcity to abundance thinking. When you stop being a prisoner of your desires, you become the architect of your contentment. Block 2. Epictetus's circle of control, the only framework you'll ever need. Here's what most people get backwards about control. They exhaust themselves trying to control outcomes while ignoring the only thing they actually can control: their responses. This fundamental confusion is why intelligent people often live frustrated lives, pouring energy into battles they cannot win while neglecting the war they could dominate. Epictetus, born a slave in the Roman Empire, discovered ultimate freedom through a simple but revolutionary insight. Everything in existence falls into exactly 2 categories: what's up to you and what isn't. Your thoughts, values, judgments, and actions live completely within your control. Other people's opinions, external events, natural disasters, economic conditions, even your own body's health and aging, these exist outside your control. This isn't passive resignation or helpless acceptance, it's strategic focus. When you stop wasting energy on uncontrollables, you become unstoppable in areas that matter. Consider elite athletes. They don't control whether they win, but they control their training, preparation, and effort. They don't control referee decisions, but they control their response to those decisions. The circle of control works like this. Imagine every situation as containing two circles. The inner circle represents your sphere of influence, your thoughts, decisions, preparations, and responses. The outer circle represents everything else, other people's choices, market conditions, weather, accidents, global events. Most people live with these circles reversed, obsessing over the outer circle while neglecting the inner one. Real-world application transforms everything. In relationships, you cannot control whether someone loves you back, but you can control how honestly and consistently you show up. At work, you cannot control whether you get promoted, but you can control the quality of your effort and your response to setbacks. In health, you cannot control genetic predispositions, but you can control your daily habits and medical compliance. Marcus Aurelius, while managing the Roman Empire, constantly reminded himself, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." He wasn't just managing his schedule. He was managing his sanity by focusing his limited mental energy where it could create actual change. The psychological relief is immediate and profound. Anxiety decreases because you're not carrying responsibility for outcomes beyond your influence. Decision-making improves because you're investing mental bandwidth in actionable areas. Relationships strengthen because you're not trying to control other people's behavior. Here's your practical implementation. Draw two circles on paper today. Label the inner circle my control and the outer circle not my control. For the next week, every time you feel stressed or frustrated, write the issue in the appropriate circle. You'll discover that 90% of your stress comes from focusing on the outer circle. This isn't just a mental exercise. It's a life-changing perspective shift that separates Stoic practitioners from everyone else spinning their wheels in frustration. Block 3. The Death Meditation, How Contemplating Mortality Transforms Priorities. Why do humans consistently delay what matters most until it's too late? The answer lies in our fundamental denial of death, the one certainty we spend our entire lives pretending won't happen. Stoics deliberately contemplated mortality not from morbid fascination, but because death awareness creates life urgency without anxiety. Marcus Aurelius, emperor of the most powerful civilization in history, ended each day contemplating his mortality. He wrote, "You could die today. Let this determine what you do and say and think." This wasn't depressing philosophy, it was liberation from triviality. When you truly internalize that your time is limited and non-renewable, everything changes. Modern psychology confirms what Stoics practiced. Mortality salience increases authenticity, deepens relationships, and clarifies values. Studies show that people who regularly contemplate death make more meaningful choices, spend more time with loved ones, and waste less energy on status competitions. They become more present because they understand that this moment will never return. The death meditation works through stark recognition of impermanence. Your parents will die. When did you last have a meaningful conversation with them? Your friendships will end through death or distance. Are you investing in these relationships now? Your health will decline. Are you treating your body as the temporary vehicle it is? Your career will eventually end. Are you building something meaningful or just collecting paychecks? Steve Jobs, facing his own mortality, said, "Remembering that you are going to die is the best way I know to avoid the trap of thinking you have something to lose." This isn't about becoming reckless. It's about becoming real. Death awareness strips away pretense and reveals what actually matters versus what you've been conditioned to think matters. The practice has 3 components. First, morning acknowledgement. Start each day recognizing that neither you nor anyone you love is guaranteed another day. This isn't pessimism, it's accuracy. Second, evening reflection. Review how you spent your irreplaceable hours and whether those choices aligned with your deepest values. Third, regular contemplation of impermanence. Observe how everything around you, buildings, relationships, even mountains, exists in constant flux. What transforms when you integrate death awareness? Procrastination dissolves because you recognize that perfect timing doesn't exist. Grudges become obviously wasteful because life is too short for extended resentment. Superficial pursuits lose their appeal because you understand the difference between impressive and important. Difficult conversations happen sooner because you realize that avoiding them doesn't make time unlimited. The goal isn't to become obsessed with death, but to become liberated by life's brevity. When Roman generals returned from victorious campaigns, a slave would whisper Memento Mori. Remember, you must die to prevent arrogance. This wasn't cruelty, it was wisdom. Today, practice your own Memento Mori by asking, if I had 6 months to live, what would I change immediately? Then start changing those things now, because your actual timeline is unknown and probably shorter than you assume. Block 4. Negative visualization, ancient mental training for modern resilience. What if the secret to unshakable happiness wasn't positive thinking, but deliberately imagining loss? This counterintuitive approach, called negative visualization by Stoics, builds psychological resilience while increasing gratitude for what you currently have. It's mental insurance against life's inevitable setbacks. Seneca regularly practiced imagining the loss of his wealth, status, and relationships, not from pessimism, but from wisdom. He understood that attachment without preparation leads to devastation when change inevitably comes. By mentally rehearsing loss, he reduced its emotional impact while deepening appreciation for present circumstances. Modern cognitive behavioral therapy validates this ancient practice. Exposure therapy works by gradually introducing feared scenarios in controlled settings, reducing their psychological power. Negative visualization operates similarly. By imagining setbacks before they occur, you build emotional resilience and practical preparedness. Navy SEALs use similar techniques, mentally rehearsing mission failures to maintain composure under actual pressure. The practice has 3 levels. First, temporary loss. Imagine losing your job, relationship, or health for 1 year. How would you adapt? What resources would you draw upon? What would you learn about yourself? Second, permanent loss. Envision the death of loved ones or complete loss of current circumstances. This isn't morbid fantasy, it's acknowledgement of life's fragility that makes present moments precious. Third, total loss. Imagine losing everything: health, relationships, possessions, reputation. What would remain? This reveals your essential self beneath external circumstances. Negative visualization produces unexpected benefits. Anxiety decreases because you've mentally prepared for worst-case scenarios instead of avoiding them. Decision-making improves because you've considered downside risks alongside upside potential. Gratitude becomes automatic because you regularly contemplate life without current blessings. Resilience builds because you've rehearsed adaptation strategies before needing them. Consider practical applications. Before important meetings, imagine them going badly and plan your response. Before traveling, visualize flight delays or cancellations and prepare mentally. Before making major purchases, imagine losing the money and assess whether you'd still choose the same way. This isn't pessimism. It's strategic thinking that separates prepared individuals from those blindsided by predictable challenges. The key is balance. Enough negative visualization to build resilience without creating obsessive worry. Stoics recommended this practice in small doses, like medicine. Spend 5 minutes weekly imagining temporary setbacks, monthly contemplating major losses, and annually considering complete life changes. This builds psychological flexibility without dwelling in negativity. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "What we do now echoes in eternity," but he also knew that everything we currently have is temporary. Negative visualization helps you hold both truths simultaneously, caring deeply about outcomes while remaining unattached to specific results. When you've mentally rehearsed loss, you can pursue goals with full effort while maintaining equanimity regardless of outcomes. Start today with this simple exercise. Imagine losing something you value for just 1 week. How would you adapt? What would you discover about yourself? This isn't inviting misfortune. It's preparing for reality in a world where change is the only constant. Block 5. The view from above perspective that dissolves petty problems. When was the last time your problems felt insurmountable until you gained perspective? Marcus Aurelius regularly practiced what Stoics call the view from above, imagining his concerns from cosmic perspective to distinguish between genuinely important issues and temporary turbulence that feels overwhelming only because of proximity. Picture this: you're stressed about a work presentation, relationship conflict, or financial pressure. Now imagine viewing that situation from an airplane window. Your problems become literally smaller. Zoom out further to satellite view. Your entire city becomes a dot. Continue to space perspective. Earth becomes a pale blue dot, as Carl Sagan described it, suspended in infinite darkness. Your current crisis maintains exactly zero cosmic significance. This isn't about minimizing legitimate concerns or embracing nihilism. It's about calibrating your emotional response to match actual importance. Most of what we label as crises are actually inconveniences that we've magnified through narrow focus and emotional amplification. The view from above restores proportional thinking. Ancient Stoics practiced this regularly. Marcus Aurelius, managing military campaigns and political crises, would imagine Rome from the perspective of future historians. Would this current emergency even warrant a footnote in the grand narrative? Usually not. This perspective allowed him to address problems with appropriate urgency without being paralyzed by false catastrophizing. Neuroscience explains why this works. Stress narrows attention and activates fight-or-flight responses designed for immediate physical threats. Modern life rarely presents actual dangers, but our brains interpret deadlines, social conflicts, and financial pressures as survival threats. The view from above activates the prefrontal cortex, restoring rational thinking and emotional regulation. Practical application transforms daily experience. Traffic jams become opportunities for reflection instead of rage when you remember that this delay is invisible from any meaningful perspective. Workplace drama loses its intensity when you consider how little it matters beyond your immediate environment. Social media controversies become obviously trivial when viewed from historical perspective. Will anyone remember this outrage in 5 years? The practice has multiple dimensions. Temporal perspective. Imagine viewing current problems from your deathbed. What will seem important then? Historical perspective. Consider how previous generations would evaluate your current concerns. Geographical perspective. Remember that your problems exist in one tiny location among billions of others. Cosmic perspective. Contemplate the universe's scale and timeline compared to your temporary difficulties. This doesn't mean becoming indifferent or passive. Some problems genuinely require urgent attention: health crises, family emergencies, career transitions. But the view from above helps you distinguish between real emergencies and manufactured drama. It allows you to respond rather than react, bringing appropriate energy to genuine challenges while ignoring trivial turbulence. Implementation is simple but powerful. When you feel overwhelmed, literally look up at the sky and remember the vast perspective it represents. Ask yourself, will this matter in 10 years, 10 months, 10 days? Write your problems on paper, then imagine reading them from different vantage points. How does the view change? Practice zooming out regularly, especially when emotions run high. The goal isn't to become detached from life, but to engage with appropriate intensity. Save your energy for battles worth fighting and situations worth your attention. Let the view from above guide your focus toward what genuinely deserves your irreplaceable time and emotional investment. Block 6. Morning Reflection Ritual. How Stoics started each day with intention. How you begin your morning determines the quality of your entire day. Yet most people stumble from bed directly into reactive mode, checking phones and responding to external demands before establishing internal direction. Stoics understood that consciousness is your most precious resource, requiring deliberate cultivation rather than accidental distribution. Marcus Aurelius began each day with written reflection, creating what became known as meditations. not a book intended for publication, but personal dialogue with his highest self. Before facing the demands of empire, he reminded himself of his values, priorities, and philosophical commitments. This wasn't self-help, it was self-preparation for the challenges ahead. The Stoic morning ritual has 4 components. First, acknowledgement of mortality. Recognize that this day is irreplaceable and unknown in length. This creates urgency without anxiety, focusing attention on meaningful choices rather than habitual reactions. Second, value clarification. Remind yourself what you stand for and what you're trying to become. Third, challenge preparation. Anticipate likely difficulties and mentally rehearse responses aligned with your principles. Fourth, gratitude recognition. Acknowledge current blessings before pursuing new goals. Modern neuroscience validates ancient wisdom. The brain's default mode network, active during rest, tends toward worry, regret, and random rumination. Deliberate morning reflection redirects this mental energy toward intentional thinking. Studies show that people who begin days with structured reflection demonstrate better decision-making, emotional regulation, and goal achievement throughout the day. Consider the alternative: waking up and immediately checking email, social media, or news. You're essentially allowing external priorities to hijack your mental state before you've established internal equilibrium. Your first thoughts become reactions to other people's agendas rather than alignment with your own values. This reactive pattern continues throughout the day, leaving you feeling busy but unfulfilled. The practice requires minimal time but maximum consistency. 15 minutes of morning reflection creates more clarity than hours of scattered thinking throughout the day. Begin by writing 3 pages of stream of consciousness thoughts. This clears mental clutter and reveals underlying concerns. Then ask yourself, what kind of person do I want to be today? What challenges might I face? And how will I respond according to my values? What am I grateful for right now? Seneca modified this approach by imagining potential obstacles and rehearsing philosophical responses. If someone criticizes me today, I'll remember that their opinion reflects their character, not mine. If I encounter delays or setbacks, I'll practice patience and look for hidden opportunities. If I'm tempted by shortcuts or compromises, I'll remember my long-term goals and values. The transformation is gradual but profound. Days become more intentional because you've started with purpose rather than default patterns. Decisions improve because you've reminded yourself of your principles before facing temptations. Relationships strengthen because you've prepared mentally to show up as your best self rather than reacting from impulse. Practical implementation adapts to your circumstances. If you can't write, reflect mentally during your commute or morning routine. If you're pressed for time, focus on one component daily rather than skipping entirely. If you live with others, wake up 15 minutes earlier to ensure uninterrupted reflection time. The goal isn't perfection but preparation. By starting each day with intentional reflection, you're investing in the quality of all subsequent hours. Your morning ritual becomes the foundation for living according to your values rather than merely reacting to circumstances. Block 7. Evening Review Practice. The nightly audit that compounds wisdom. If your morning ritual sets the day's intention, your evening review measures its execution. Seneca ended each day by examining his actions, thoughts, and responses, not for self-criticism, but for continuous improvement. This practice, called the examination of conscience, transforms daily experience into accumulated wisdom. The evening review works like compound interest for personal development. Small daily insights compounded over time create significant character growth. Without regular reflection, you repeat the same mistakes and miss valuable lessons embedded in ordinary experiences. With consistent review, each day contributes to your philosophical evolution. Seneca wrote, "When the light has been removed and my wife has fallen silent, I examine the whole day and go back over what I've done and said, hiding nothing from myself, passing nothing by." This wasn't obsessive self-monitoring, it was deliberate learning from lived experience. He treated each day as a laboratory for practicing Stoic principles under real-world conditions. The practice has three phases. First, factual review. What actually happened today without emotional interpretation or judgment? This develops honest self-awareness and accurate memory. Second, philosophical analysis. Where did I act according to my values and where did I fall short? This identifies patterns and growth opportunities. Third, forward planning. What did I learn today that will inform tomorrow's choices? Modern psychology confirms the power of reflective practice. Metacognition, thinking about thinking, is strongly correlated with learning, emotional regulation, and behavioral change. People who regularly reflect on their experiences show improved decision-making, increased self-awareness, and better goal achievement compared to those who simply accumulate experiences without examination. The evening review reveals patterns invisible during daily activity. You might discover that you're consistently reactive during certain times of day, with specific people, or in particular environments. You might notice that your values and actions align better in some areas than others. You might recognize that certain triggers consistently derail your best intentions. Practical implementation requires structure but not rigidity. Set aside 10 to 15 minutes before sleep for written reflection. Use consistent questions. What went well today and why? What could I have handled better? What did I learn about myself or others? How will I apply these insights tomorrow? The key is honest assessment without harsh self-judgment. Marcus Aurelius used his evening review to practice gratitude for difficult people and situations. Instead of just venting about challenges, he looked for lessons and growth opportunities. Difficult colleagues became teachers of patience. Setbacks became opportunities to practice resilience. Criticism became chances to examine his ego and attachments. The transformation happens gradually but powerfully. Self-awareness increases because you're regularly examining your thoughts and behaviors. Decision-making improves because you're learning from past choices rather than repeating them unconsciously. Emotional regulation strengthens because you're processing daily experiences rather than letting them accumulate as unresolved stress. Avoid common pitfalls. Don't use evening review for rumination or self-criticism. The goal is learning, not self-punishment. Don't try to solve every problem during review. Some insights need time to develop. Don't expect immediate perfection. The practice itself is more important than perfect execution. Think of evening review as a daily board meeting with your highest self. You're examining performance, identifying areas for improvement, and planning strategic adjustments. This isn't narcissistic self-absorption. It's conscious participation in your own development. Over time, the evening review creates a feedback loop that accelerates growth. You become more aware of your patterns, more intentional in your choices, and more skilled at learning from experience. This nightly audit becomes the foundation for continuous improvement and deepening wisdom. Block 8, Memento Mori in action, living urgently without anxiety. Death is not the opposite of life. It's the deadline that makes life meaningful. Yet most people live as if they have unlimited time, postponing important decisions and meaningful actions until some imaginary future when conditions will be perfect. Memento Mori, remember you must die, isn't morbid obsession. It's the ultimate productivity hack. When Roman generals returned from victorious campaigns, a slave would whisper Memento Mori to prevent arrogance and maintain perspective. This wasn't cruelty, it was wisdom. Success without humility leads to downfall, and achievement without awareness of mortality leads to meaningless accumulation rather than purposeful living. Practical Memento Mori transforms decision-making. Instead of asking, "What do I want to do?" ask, "What would I regret not doing if I had limited time?" Instead of "How can I look successful?" ask, "How can I create lasting meaning?" Instead of "What will others think?" ask, "What matters when everything else is stripped away?" Consider how mortality awareness changes specific life areas. Career decisions. You stop climbing ladders that lean against the wrong walls and start building something personally meaningful. Relationship choices. You invest in deep connections rather than maintaining superficial networks. Financial planning. You balance future security with present experience, recognizing that money saved for someday might never get spent. Health habits. You treat your body as a temporary gift rather than permanent possession. Steve Jobs' Stanford commencement speech captured this perfectly. Remembering that you are going to die is the best way I know to avoid the trap of thinking you have something to lose. You are already naked. There is no reason not to follow your heart. This isn't reckless advice. It's recognition that perceived security is often illusion preventing authentic living. The practice requires balance between urgency and anxiety. Healthy death awareness creates productive pressure, like a deadline that focuses effort and eliminates procrastination. Unhealthy death obsession creates paralyzing fear. The difference lies in using mortality as motivation rather than dwelling in morbid speculation. Memento Mori applications are surprisingly practical. Before important conversations, remember that you and the other person won't be here forever. This often leads to more honest, meaningful dialogue. When facing difficult decisions, consider the deathbed test. What would you choose if you knew the end was near? When tempted by trivial pursuits, remember that time is your only non-renewable resource. Marcus Aurelius, managing the most powerful empire in history, regularly reminded himself of impermanence. He wrote, "Loss is nothing else but change, and change is nature's delight." This perspective allowed him to hold power lightly while wielding it effectively. He understood that his position, achievements, and even his life were temporary responsibilities rather than permanent possessions. Daily memento mori practice is simple but profound. Each morning, acknowledge that this day might be your last. How does this change your priorities? Each evening, reflect on whether you live today in alignment with your deepest values. Each week, review whether you're moving toward goals that matter or simply staying busy with urgent but unimportant activities. The goal isn't to become obsessed with death but liberated by life's brevity. When you truly internalize that your time is limited, everything changes. Grudges become obviously wasteful. Perfectionism becomes clearly impossible. Comparison becomes utterly pointless. Authenticity becomes absolutely essential. Paradoxically, death awareness increases life satisfaction. Studies show that people who regularly contemplate mortality report greater happiness, stronger relationships, and more meaningful experiences. They stop postponing joy and start prioritizing what actually matters over what merely seems urgent. Begin today. If you had exactly 1 year to live, what would you change immediately? Then start changing those things now, because your actual timeline is unknown and probably shorter than you assume. Block 9. The obstacle as path, reframing every setback as advantage. What if your biggest problems are actually your greatest teachers? This isn't motivational platitude. It's the Stoic practice of perceiving obstacles as opportunities for growth, strength, and wisdom. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Traditional thinking views obstacles as problems to avoid or overcome. Stoic thinking reframes obstacles as training equipment for developing virtues like patience, creativity, resilience, and wisdom. A blocked path isn't just inconvenience, it's invitation to find better routes, develop new skills, or question whether your destination was worth reaching. Consider how this reframe changes everything. Job loss becomes opportunity to reassess career alignment with values. Relationship conflict becomes chance to practice communication skills and deepen understanding. Health challenges become motivation to develop discipline and appreciate what you've taken for granted. Financial setbacks become education in resourcefulness and priority clarification. The obstacle as path principle has 3 applications. First, skill development. Every challenge forces you to grow capabilities you might never have developed otherwise. Second, character building. Difficulties reveal and strengthen virtues like patience, courage, and perseverance. Third, wisdom acquisition. Setbacks provide insights unavailable through success alone. Modern examples prove this principle repeatedly. Companies that survived the 2008 recession often emerged stronger and more innovative than competitors. Athletes who overcome injuries frequently develop superior mental toughness. Entrepreneurs who experience failure gain invaluable experience that serves future ventures. The obstacle literally becomes the path to advancement. This doesn't mean seeking out problems or celebrating difficulties. It means extracting maximum value from inevitable challenges rather than simply enduring them. Stoics don't enjoy obstacles, but they refuse to let obstacles be wasted experiences. Every setback contains lessons. Every difficulty develops strength. Every delay provides reflection time. Practical implementation requires shifting your default response to problems. Instead of immediately asking, "Why is this happening to me?" ask, "What is this teaching me?" Instead of "How can I avoid this?" ask, "How can I grow through this?" Instead of "This is terrible," ask, "What opportunities does this create?" Marcus Aurelius faced plague, war, betrayal, and family tragedy, yet used each challenge to deepen his philosophical understanding. His personal journal, written during military campaigns, shows someone actively reframing difficulties as opportunities for practicing virtue. He didn't pretend problems weren't problems. He extracted wisdom from unavoidable pain. The psychological benefits are substantial. Resilience increases because you're actively looking for growth opportunities rather than feeling victimized by circumstances. Creativity improves because obstacles force innovative thinking. Confidence builds because you develop evidence of your ability to handle difficulties. Anxiety decreases because problems become challenges rather than threats. Real-world application transforms daily frustrations. Traffic jams become meditation time. Difficult people become teachers of patience. Technical problems become opportunities to develop problem-solving skills. Criticism becomes feedback for improvement. Rejection becomes redirection toward better opportunities. The key is consistency. Practicing this reframe with small obstacles builds capacity for handling major challenges. Start with minor irritations. When your coffee shop is closed, consider it opportunity to explore somewhere new. When technology fails, see it as chance to develop patience. When plans change, view it as possibility for spontaneous experience. Over time, obstacle as path thinking becomes automatic. You begin seeing challenges as inevitable parts of growth rather than interruptions to life. This doesn't eliminate difficulty, but it transforms your relationship with difficulty from resistance to curiosity. Remember, you cannot control what obstacles appear in your path, but you can control how you interpret and respond to them. Every obstacle contains the seed of equivalent or greater benefit, but only if you're willing to look for it and cultivate it. If these insights are reshaping how you see your daily struggles, hit that subscribe button, because we're about to dive into the advanced practices that separate Stoic students from Stoic masters. The next section reveals techniques so powerful they were kept secret by ancient philosophers for centuries. Block 10. Preferred Indifferents. Why success can't make you happy. Here's the uncomfortable truth about achievement. Getting what you want won't make you happy if you don't understand the difference between true goods and preferred indifference. This Stoic distinction explains why successful people often feel empty and why poor people can feel fulfilled. It's not about what you have, it's about what you think you need. Stoics divided everything into three categories: good, bad, and indifferent. True goods are virtues: wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance. These are always within your control and always beneficial. True bads are vices, the opposites of virtues. These are also within your control and always harmful. Everything else, health, wealth, reputation, relationships, career success, is indifferent to your fundamental well-being. This doesn't mean Stoics didn't care about these things. They called them preferred indifferents, things naturally preferable but not essential for happiness. Wealth is better than poverty, health better than sickness, reputation better than disgrace. But none of these external circumstances can make you virtuous or vicious, happy or miserable. Your character and choices determine your well-being, not your circumstances. Consider the implications. If you base happiness on preferred indifference, you're essentially gambling with your peace of mind. Markets crash, bodies age, relationships end, careers stagnate. When your happiness depends on maintaining favorable external circumstances, You live in constant anxiety about losing what you have or not getting what you want. Modern psychology confirms this ancient wisdom through research on hedonic adaptation. People who win lotteries return to baseline happiness levels within months. People with disabilities often report higher life satisfaction than expected. External circumstances explain only about 10% of happiness variation, while internal factors like gratitude, relationships, and meaning account for much more. This explains why Silicon Valley executives burn out despite extraordinary success. They've achieved everything our culture defines as desirable: wealth, status, recognition, yet feel empty because they've confused preferred indifference with true goods. They have everything except what actually matters: inner peace, authentic relationships, and alignment between values and actions. The preferred indifferent framework liberates you from outcome attachment while maintaining motivation. You can pursue career advancement without tying your self-worth to promotions. You can invest in relationships without demanding specific responses. You can care for your health without believing perfect fitness equals perfect life. You work toward preferred outcomes while maintaining equanimity regardless of results. Practical application transforms decision-making. When evaluating opportunities, ask, will this develop my character or just improve my circumstances? When facing setbacks, remember, this affects my preferred indifference but not my essential well-being. When celebrating successes, acknowledge, this is pleasant but not necessary for my happiness. Seneca, among Rome's wealthiest citizens, practiced voluntary discomfort to maintain perspective on preferred indifference. He regularly slept on floors, ate simple food, and wore plain clothes, not from asceticism, but to prove to himself that happiness didn't depend on luxury. He wanted to enjoy wealth without being enslaved by it. The framework doesn't promote indifference or lack of ambition. Stoics pursued preferred indifference vigorously. They just didn't confuse them with ultimate goods. Marcus Aurelius worked diligently to govern well, not because political success would make him happy, but because good governance was virtuous action regardless of outcomes. Implementation requires constant reframing. When you don't get the job, remember that career advancement is a preferred indifferent, disappointing but not devastating. When relationships struggle, recognize that while companionship is preferable, your well-being doesn't depend on others' choices. When health challenges arise, maintain perspective that physical comfort is preferred but not essential for flourishing. The goal is appropriate attachment, caring about preferred indifference without being controlled by them. You can pursue success while maintaining peace if it doesn't come. You can enjoy good fortune while preparing mentally for change. You can engage fully with life while holding outcomes lightly. This distinction between true goods and preferred indifference might be the most practically valuable insight in all of philosophy. Master it, and you'll find peace regardless of circumstances while maintaining motivation to improve your situation. Block 11. The Inner Citadel: Building an Unshakable Mental Fortress. In a world designed to disturb your peace, you need an unshakable mental fortress, what Stoics called the inner citadel. This isn't about isolation or indifference. It's about creating internal stability that remains intact regardless of external chaos. When you master this practice, you become like a lighthouse in a storm, providing guidance while remaining unmoved by turbulent conditions. The inner citadel concept emerged from Epictetus's experience as a slave. Physically powerless, he discovered that mental freedom remained absolutely within his control. No one could force him to think specific thoughts, hold particular beliefs, or abandon his values. External circumstances could affect his body and situation, but his inner self remained sovereign territory. Think of your mind as a walled city under siege. Outside forces, criticism, disappointment, unexpected challenges constantly attempt to breach your defenses. Without proper fortification, these attacks succeed, leaving you emotionally destabilized and reactive. With a strong inner citadel, you observe external pressures without being controlled by them. The fortress has 4 walls. First, the wall of judgment. You control how you interpret events, people, and circumstances. External events are neutral until you assign meaning to them. Rain isn't good or bad, it's just weather. Criticism isn't devastating or helpful, it's just words. Your judgments, not circumstances, determine your emotional state. Second, the wall of values. Your core principles remain constant regardless of external pressure. Others may compromise their integrity for convenience, but your values aren't negotiable. This wall protects against moral corruption and maintains authentic self-respect even when virtue seems costly. Third, the wall of attention. You decide where to focus your mental energy. Gossip, news cycles, social media drama, and other people's problems constantly compete for your attention. The inner citadel protects your focus, directing it toward what you can control and what serves your growth rather than what merely seems urgent or entertaining. Fourth, the wall of response. You choose how to react to every situation. Circumstances don't determine your behavior, your principles do. You can respond with patience to rudeness, with courage to threats, with compassion to hatred. Your responses remain your choice regardless of provocation. Building the inner citadel requires daily practice. Start each morning by reinforcing these walls through reflection and intention setting. When challenges arise, retreat to your citadel, pause, assess the situation from your protected vantage point, and respond from your values rather than your emotions. End each day by examining which walls held strong and which need reinforcement. Modern neuroscience supports this ancient practice. The prefrontal cortex, your brain's executive center, literally strengthens through mindfulness and reflection practices. People who regularly practice emotional regulation show increased gray matter density in areas associated with self-control and decreased reactivity in areas associated with emotional hijacking. The inner citadel doesn't mean emotional suppression or social withdrawal. You still feel emotions fully. You just don't let them dictate your responses. You still engage with others deeply. You just don't let their moods determine yours. You still care about outcomes. You just don't let results beyond your control disturb your peace. Real-world applications are immediately practical. When receiving criticism, retreat to your citadel to evaluate the feedback objectively rather than reacting defensively. When facing unexpected challenges, use your fortress walls to maintain perspective and respond strategically rather than panic. When others attempt to manipulate your emotions, your citadel protects your autonomy. Marcus Aurelius wrote these words while managing plague, war, and political crisis. Confine yourself to the present. He wasn't avoiding responsibility. He was operating from his inner citadel, addressing each challenge from a place of mental stability rather than emotional reactivity. His effectiveness came from his unshakable center, not from controlling external circumstances. The transformation is gradual but profound. Relationships improve because you're responding from wisdom rather than reactive emotion. Decision-making becomes clearer because you're not clouded by external pressure. Confidence increases because you're not dependent on others' approval for self-worth. Peace becomes your default state because you're not constantly destabilized by circumstances beyond your control. Your inner citadel is the one space in existence that belongs completely to you. External forces can affect your body, your circumstances, even your opportunities, but they cannot breach your mental fortress without your permission. Build it daily, defend it consistently, and operate from it regularly. This is the foundation of unshakable peace in an uncertain world. Block 12. Sympatheia, how understanding interconnection reduces suffering. What if your sense of separation from others is the root of most personal suffering? Stoics understood sympatheia, the fundamental interconnectedness of all existence, not as mystical concept but as practical wisdom for reducing conflict and increasing compassion. This ancient insight predates modern systems thinking by millennia while offering solutions to contemporary problems. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "We were born to work together like feet, hands, and eyes, like the two rows of teeth, upper and lower." This wasn't poetic metaphor but accurate description of reality. Just as your hand doesn't compete with your foot, Human beings function best through cooperation rather than competition. Our perceived separateness is illusion that creates unnecessary suffering. Consider how Sympatheia changes your perspective on difficult people. That aggressive driver isn't your enemy. They're part of the same human family, possibly suffering from stress, pain, or fear you can't see. Your demanding boss isn't deliberately trying to ruin your life. They're responding to pressures and circumstances within their own experience. Your argumentative family member isn't attacking you personally. They're expressing their own internal struggles. This understanding doesn't excuse harmful behavior or eliminate the need for boundaries. It simply reduces the personal offense you take from others' actions. When you recognize that people's behavior typically reflects their internal state rather than their assessment of you, you can respond with curiosity rather than defensiveness. The practice has 3 levels. First, intellectual understanding, recognizing that all humans share similar fundamental needs, fears, and desires. Second, emotional connection, extending compassion to others' struggles even when their behavior affects you negatively. Third, practical application, using interconnection awareness to improve relationships and resolve conflicts. Modern research validates ancient wisdom. Studies in social psychology demonstrate that people who feel connected to others report higher happiness, better health, and greater resilience. Those who practice perspective taking, imagining others' experiences, show increased empathy and reduced prejudice. Neuroimaging reveals that compassion meditation literally changes brain structure, enhancing areas associated with emotional regulation and social cognition. Sympatheia transforms conflict resolution. Instead of viewing disagreements as battles to win, you see them as opportunities to understand different perspectives within the same human experience. Instead of taking criticism personally, you recognize it as information about the critic's values and concerns. Instead of harboring resentment, you understand that holding anger hurts you more than the person who triggered it. Practical applications are immediately useful. When someone cuts you off in traffic, remember they are dealing with their own urgency or stress. This doesn't make it acceptable, but it makes it understandable. When receiving harsh feedback, consider what pressures or concerns motivate the delivery. This helps you extract useful information while protecting your emotional equilibrium. The interconnection perspective also reduces envy and comparison. When you truly understand that others' success doesn't diminish your opportunities, competition transforms into collaboration. Their achievements become part of the collective human advancement you participate in rather than evidence of your inadequacy. Marcus Aurelius practicing Sympatheia while managing military campaigns against barbarian tribes. Instead of viewing enemies as fundamentally different, he recognized them as humans responding to their own needs and circumstances. This perspective didn't prevent necessary military action, but it eliminated hatred and allowed for more strategic, less emotionally driven decisions. Environmental applications are profound. Recognizing your interconnection with natural systems transforms how you relate to the planet. You're not separate from nature, you're part of it. Your health depends on environmental health. Your well-being connects to the well-being of all life. This understanding motivates sustainable choices not from guilt, but from accurate perception of interdependence. The practice requires shifting from me versus them to we together. This doesn't mean becoming naive about human nature or eliminating healthy competition. It means recognizing that your well-being ultimately connects to others' well-being, that your success is enhanced by others' success, that your struggles are shared by others facing similar challenges. Start today by practicing perspective-taking with one difficult person in your life. Instead of focusing on how their behavior affects you, Consider what internal experiences might motivate their actions. This isn't about excusing harmful behavior. It's about understanding the human condition you share. This simple shift often transforms relationships and reduces personal suffering. Sympatheia isn't just philosophy. It's practical wisdom for living peacefully in an interconnected world. When you truly understand that we're all part of the same human experience, compassion becomes natural and conflict becomes unnecessary. Block 13. Prosoche, the art of continuous self-examination. Why do intelligent people repeat the same mistakes? Why do well-intentioned individuals act against their stated values? The answer lies in the gap between philosophical understanding and practical application. Stoics called this gap prosoche, the continuous attention to living according to your principles. This practice transforms intellectual knowledge into lived wisdom. Prosoche means attention or mindfulness in Greek, but it's more specific than general awareness. It's the deliberate practice of catching yourself in the moment when you're about to act against your values and choosing differently. It's real-time self-correction based on philosophical principles, rather than emotional impulses. Think of Prosoche as having an internal observer who notices when you're about to complain, gossip, lose your temper, or make decisions based on fear rather than wisdom. This observer doesn't judge or criticize. It simply notices the gap between your ideals and your actions, creating space for conscious choice rather than unconscious reaction. The practice requires developing what psychologists call metacognition, awareness of your own thinking processes. Most people live on autopilot, reacting to circumstances without examining their responses. Prosoche creates conscious participation in your own life by noticing thoughts, emotions, and impulses before they become actions. Seneca practiced prosoche by regularly examining his motives and responses. Before making important decisions, he would pause and ask, "Am I acting from wisdom or from fear? Am I choosing this because it's right or because it's easy? Am I responding to what's actually happening or to what I'm afraid might happen?" This internal questioning prevented many poor choices and strengthened his character over time. Modern cognitive behavioral therapy uses similar techniques. The practice of cognitive restructuring involves noticing automatic thoughts and challenging their accuracy and usefulness. People who develop this skill show improved emotional regulation, better decision-making, and increased resilience to stress and setbacks. Prosoche has three components. First, self-awareness, noticing your thoughts, emotions, and impulses without immediately acting on them. Second, value alignment, comparing your potential actions against your stated principles and long-term goals. Third, conscious choice, deliberately selecting responses that serve your growth rather than your comfort. The practice is particularly powerful in triggering situations. When someone criticizes you, Prosoche creates a pause between their words and your response. In that pause, you can choose whether to react defensively or respond thoughtfully. When facing a difficult decision, Prosoche helps you choose based on your values rather than your immediate feelings. Real-world applications are endless. Before sending an angry email, Prosoche asks, "Will this response solve the problem or just make me feel better temporarily?" Before making a purchase, it questions, "Am I buying this because I need it or because I want to feel better?" Before gossiping, it wonders, "Does sharing this information serve any positive purpose?" The key is consistency rather than perfection. You won't catch every unconscious reaction, but each time you do creates a stronger pattern of conscious living. Over time, the gap between your values and your actions shrinks, and you become more integrated as a person. Marcus Aurelius used Prosoche to examine his motives as emperor. He regularly questioned whether his decisions served the common good or his personal interests. whether his responses came from wisdom or ego, whether his actions aligned with his philosophical commitments. This self-examination made him more effective as a leader and more peaceful as a person. The practice requires brutal honesty with yourself. You must be willing to notice when you're being petty, dishonest, cowardly, or self-serving. This isn't self-criticism. It's self-awareness that enables growth. The goal isn't to eliminate all negative impulses, but to recognize them before they become harmful actions. Prosoche also involves examining your positive actions and responses. When you handle a difficult situation well, notice what mental processes led to that success. When you make a decision you're proud of, identify the values and reasoning that guided you. This reinforces good patterns and makes them more likely to repeat. The transformation is gradual but profound. You become more trustworthy because your actions consistently align with your stated values. You become more peaceful because you're not constantly dealing with consequences of impulsive choices. You become more confident because you're living according to your own standards rather than others' expectations. Start today by choosing one area of life where you'd like to improve, perhaps patience, honesty, or courage. Throughout the day, practice noticing when situations arise that test this virtue. In the pause between trigger and response, choose consciously rather than reacting automatically. This is Prosoche in action, and it's the foundation of wisdom. Block 14. Spiritual exercises, daily practices beyond meditation. While meditation has become synonymous with spiritual practice, Stoics developed dozens of specific exercises designed to strengthen different aspects of character and wisdom. These aren't abstract contemplations but practical drills that build psychological resilience, emotional regulation, and ethical clarity. Think of them as CrossFit for your soul. The term spiritual exercises comes from Pierre Hadot's analysis of ancient philosophy. Unlike modern philosophy, which focuses on abstract theorizing, ancient philosophy was about transformation, changing how you think, feel, and act. Stoic exercises were designed to interrupt habitual thought patterns and create new neural pathways aligned with virtue and wisdom. One powerful exercise is the discipline of assent, pausing before accepting any initial impression as true. Your mind constantly generates automatic judgments. This is terrible. That person is rude. This situation is hopeless. The discipline of assent creates space between impression and belief, allowing you to examine whether your initial reactions are accurate or helpful. Another exercise is objective representation, describing events without emotional interpretation. Instead of "my boss humiliated me in the meeting," you practice saying, "my boss criticized my proposal in front of colleagues." This isn't denial of emotions but separation of facts from interpretations, which often reduces emotional intensity and increases clarity. The reserve clause exercise involves adding fate permitting to all your plans. Instead of "I'll go to the gym tomorrow," you think, "I'll go to the gym tomorrow, fate permitting." This isn't pessimism but realistic acknowledgement that you control your intentions but not all outcomes. It reduces attachment to specific results while maintaining full effort toward goals. Voluntary discomfort involves deliberately experiencing minor inconveniences to build resilience and perspective. Take cold showers, sleep on the floor occasionally, fast for a day, or walk instead of driving. These practices prove that you can handle more than you think while reducing attachment to comfort and convenience. The premeditation of evils we discussed earlier is another formal exercise. Spend time weekly imagining loss of health, wealth, relationships, or reputation. This builds psychological resilience while increasing gratitude for current circumstances. It's mental preparation for inevitable challenges rather than morbid obsession. Evening reflection involves daily review of thoughts, actions, and responses. Unlike anxious rumination, this is structured examination designed to extract learning from experience. Ask yourself, where did I act according to my values today? Where did I fall short? What did I learn that will help tomorrow? The view from above exercise involves imagining your problems from cosmic perspective. When stressed about daily concerns, mentally zoom out to see your situation from space, from historical perspective, or from your deathbed. This doesn't minimize legitimate concerns but restores proportional thinking. Negative visualization goes beyond premeditation of evils to include imagining temporary loss of current benefits. Imagine being single for a day to appreciate your relationship. Imagine losing your job to appreciate your career. Imagine poor health to appreciate physical ability. This increases gratitude while reducing taking things for granted. The discipline of action involves examining your motives before acting. Ask, am I doing this for ego or for genuine benefit? Am I acting from fear or from wisdom? Am I choosing this because it's right or because it's easy? This creates alignment between values and actions. Sympathetic understanding involves deliberately imagining others' perspectives, especially difficult people. When someone annoys you, spend time considering what pressures, fears, or pain might motivate their behavior. This doesn't excuse harmful actions but reduces personal offense and increases compassion. Modern neuroscience supports these ancient practices. Regular meditation changes brain structure, increasing gray matter in areas associated with learning and emotional regulation. Cognitive reframing techniques reduce activity in the amygdala while strengthening prefrontal cortex function. Gratitude practices increase dopamine and serotonin while reducing cortisol. The key is consistency rather than perfection. Choose 2 or 3 exercises that resonate with your current challenges and practice them daily for a month. Like physical exercise, spiritual exercises require regular practice to create lasting change. Start small and build gradually rather than attempting too much initially. These exercises work best when integrated into daily routines rather than treated as separate activities. Practice objective representation during your commute. Use the reserve clause when making plans. Apply sympathetic understanding during difficult conversations. Exercise the discipline of assent throughout the day. The goal isn't to become emotionally numb or rigidly controlled. It's to develop conscious choice about your responses rather than being controlled by unconscious reactions. These exercises create space between stimulus and response, allowing wisdom to guide your actions rather than impulse. Block 15. The sage ideal striving for wisdom without perfectionism. The Stoic sage represents theoretical perfection, someone who has achieved complete wisdom, virtue, and emotional equilibrium. This ideal seems impossibly distant from human reality, leading many to dismiss it as impractical perfectionism. But understanding the sage properly transforms it from discouraging standard into motivating direction. The sage isn't a destination but a compass. Stoics acknowledge that the sage might be purely theoretical. Perhaps no human has ever achieved complete wisdom. Cato the Younger, widely considered the closest to sage-like virtue, still made mistakes and experienced emotional struggles. Even Marcus Aurelius, writing his philosophical reflections, was clearly working on his own character development rather than writing from achieved perfection. The sage ideal serves 3 practical functions. First, it provides direction. When facing difficult decisions, ask, what would the sage do? This question clarifies values and priorities even when perfect wisdom seems impossible. Second, it offers hope. Human nature includes capacity for growth and improvement, regardless of current limitations. Third, it maintains humility. Recognizing the distance between your current state and ideal virtue prevents arrogance while encouraging continued development. Think of the sage like a mathematical concept: infinity, perfect circles, or absolute zero. These concepts are useful for understanding and measuring reality even though they may not exist in pure form. The sage helps you evaluate progress and maintain direction without requiring perfect achievement for valuable improvement. The sage possesses 4 primary characteristics. First, perfect wisdom, understanding what is truly good, bad, and indifferent. The sage never mistakes external circumstances for internal well-being or confuses preferred indifference with ultimate goods. Second, consistent virtue, always acting according to wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance regardless of circumstances or pressures. Third, emotional equilibrium, experiencing emotions without being controlled by them. The sage feels anger at injustice but doesn't let it compromise judgment. They experience grief at loss but don't let it paralyze action. They feel fear in dangerous situations but don't let it prevent appropriate responses. Fourth, inner freedom, complete independence from others' opinions, external circumstances, and uncontrollable outcomes. Modern psychology offers insights into sage-like qualities through research on psychological maturity and emotional intelligence. People with high emotional intelligence show better decision-making under pressure, stronger relationships, and greater resilience to stress. They experience emotions fully while maintaining perspective and choice about responses. The danger of the sage ideal lies in perfectionist interpretation, believing you must achieve perfect virtue to make meaningful progress. This creates discouragement and paralysis rather than motivation. The proper understanding recognizes that every step towards sage-like qualities improves your life and contributes to human flourishing. Practical application involves using the sage as a reference point rather than a requirement. When tempted to gossip, ask, would the sage engage in this conversation? When facing criticism, wonder, how would the sage respond to this feedback? When making career decisions, consider, what choice would the sage make based on virtue rather than external rewards? The sage ideal also prevents settling for mediocrity. Without high standards, it's easy to rationalize poor choices or excuse character flaws as just human nature. The sage reminds you that humans are capable of extraordinary wisdom and virtue, even if perfect achievement remains elusive. Seneca wrote extensively about the sage while acknowledging his own imperfections. He used the ideal to examine his motives and choices without expecting immediate perfection. This created continuous improvement rather than discouraging comparison. He was becoming more sage-like without believing he had arrived at complete wisdom. The sage ideal works best when balanced with self-compassion. You're striving for extraordinary virtue while accepting current limitations. You're working toward emotional equilibrium while allowing yourself to experience human emotions. You're developing wisdom while acknowledging areas of ignorance and confusion. Real-world application means making daily choices that move you closer to sage-like qualities rather than waiting for perfect wisdom before acting. Choose patience over irritation in traffic. Choose honesty over convenient lies in relationships. Choose courage over comfort in challenging situations. Each choice creates momentum toward the ideal. The transformation happens gradually through accumulated choices aligned with virtue. You don't wake up one day as a sage, but you do wake up one day realizing you handle challenges with more wisdom, respond to criticism with more equilibrium, and make decisions with clearer values than you did years ago. Remember, the sage ideal isn't about achieving perfect virtue, but about maintaining direction toward virtue. Use it as inspiration for growth rather than standard for self-criticism. Every step toward wisdom matters, even if perfect wisdom remains beyond reach. Block 16. Social duty versus self-focus, balancing service and boundaries. How do you focus on yourself without becoming selfish? This tension between self-development and social responsibility troubles many people drawn to Stoic philosophy. The answer lies in understanding that true self-focus includes service to others, while healthy service requires strong personal boundaries. The goal isn't choosing between self and others, but integrating both into coherent life philosophy. Marcus Aurelius managed this balance while literally ruling the known world. His personal reflections show someone deeply committed to self-improvement while simultaneously dedicated to serving the common good. He understood that becoming a better person made him a better leader, and that effective leadership required continuous personal development. The confusion often comes from misunderstanding what focusing on yourself means. It doesn't mean narcissistic self-absorption or indifference to others' welfare. It means taking responsibility for your own thoughts, emotions, and actions rather than trying to control others' behavior. It means developing your character and capabilities so you can contribute more effectively to shared human flourishing. Stoic social duty operates from the concept of Sympatheia, recognizing that individual well-being connects to collective well-being. Just as a healthy cell contributes to a healthy body, a virtuous individual contributes to a virtuous society. Your personal development isn't separate from social good. It's how you serve social good most effectively. The practice involves understanding your roles and responsibilities. You might simultaneously be a parent, employee, citizen, friend, and community member. Each role carries specific duties and obligations. Self-focus means fulfilling these roles with integrity and competence rather than avoiding them or performing them poorly. Boundaries become essential for sustainable service. You cannot help others effectively if you're burned out, resentful, or operating from empty reserves. Saying no to some requests allows you to say yes more fully to others. Taking care of your physical and mental health enables you to serve others more consistently and effectively. The key is motivation. Are you setting boundaries to avoid responsibility or to serve more effectively? Are you focusing on self-development to escape social obligations or to fulfill them better? The sage serves others not from duty or guilt, but from understanding that individual flourishing and collective flourishing are interconnected. Practical application requires examining your current balance. If you're constantly sacrificing your well-being for others, you may be enabling their dependence rather than genuinely helping them. If you're avoiding social responsibilities for self-development, you may be missing opportunities for growth that come through service. Effective boundaries communicate your limitations while maintaining commitment to relationships and responsibilities. I can't work late tonight because I have family commitments, but I'll complete this project first thing tomorrow morning. This maintains professional responsibility while protecting personal priorities. Self-development activities should ultimately serve others. Developing patience benefits everyone who interacts with you. Building wisdom improves your decision-making in all roles. Cultivating courage enables you to stand up for others when necessary. Personal growth becomes social contribution rather than selfish indulgence. The Stoic approach avoids both extremes, martyring yourself for others' immediate wants and isolating yourself from social responsibilities. You serve others by becoming the best version of yourself while maintaining healthy boundaries that prevent burnout and resentment. Seneca balanced enormous wealth and political influence with philosophical development. He understood that his resources and position created opportunities for service, but also that serving effectively required wisdom and virtue. His self-development directly supported his social contributions rather than competing with them. Modern examples include leaders who maintain rigorous personal disciplines, exercise, reflection, learning, not for selfish reasons, but because their effectiveness depends on their personal capacity. They serve others by taking care of themselves, while taking care of themselves by serving others. The integration happens through viewing self-development as preparation for service and service as opportunity for self-development. Challenging relationships teach patience. Professional responsibilities develop competence. Community involvement builds character. Social engagement becomes spiritual practice rather than distraction from it. Start by examining your current roles and responsibilities. Are you fulfilling them with the competence and integrity you're capable of? Where do you need better boundaries to serve more effectively? How can your personal development support your social contributions? This integration transforms both self-focus and social service from competing priorities into complementary practices. Block 17. Time as non-renewable resource. Stoic urgency without stress. Time is the only resource you can never recover, earn more of, or replace, yet most people treat it like an unlimited commodity. Stoics understood that death gives life meaning by creating scarcity, and that scarcity creates urgency, and that urgency can either produce stress or focus depending on how you handle it. The difference between productive urgency and destructive stress lies in your relationship with time. Marcus Aurelius repeatedly reminded himself that time was finite and precious. He wrote, "It is not death that a man should fear, but never beginning to live." This wasn't about cramming more activities into each day, but about ensuring that your limited time serves your highest values and deepest purposes. The paradox of time urgency is that rushing usually wastes more time than it saves. When you're anxious about time scarcity, you make poor decisions, skip important steps, and create problems that require additional time to fix. Healthy time awareness creates focus without panic, efficiency without anxiety. Consider how different your daily choices would be if you truly internalized time's non-renewable nature. Would you spend 2 hours scrolling social media if you remembered those hours could never be recovered? Would you stay in conversations that drain your energy if you recognized that energy as irreplaceable? Would you delay important decisions if you understood that perfect timing doesn't exist? The Stoic approach to time involves 3 practices. First, morning acknowledgement. Begin each day recognizing that these 24 hours are unique and irreplaceable. This creates appreciation for the present moment while motivating intentional choices about how to spend it. Second, regular priority clarification. Frequently ask yourself whether your current activities align with your most important values and goals. Third, evening reflection. Review how you spent your irreplaceable hours and whether those choices moved you toward or away from your ideal life. This isn't self-criticism, but honest assessment that informs future decisions. The goal is learning from time use rather than perfect time management. Time scarcity doesn't mean rushing through experiences or eliminating enjoyment. It means being conscious about your choices and ensuring that your limited time serves your authentic priorities rather than default habits or external pressures. Sometimes the best use of time is rest, reflection, or simple pleasure, but chosen consciously rather than fallen into accidentally. The modern world creates artificial time pressure through constant connectivity and endless options. You feel busy without being productive, rushed without being efficient. Stoic time awareness helps you distinguish between genuine urgency and manufactured stress, between important deadlines and arbitrary timelines. Seneca practiced voluntary poverty partly to understand his relationship with time. He realized that pursuing wealth required trading irreplaceable hours for replaceable money, a transaction that often didn't serve his deeper values. This didn't make him anti-wealth, but helped him evaluate whether specific financial pursuits were worth their time costs. Practical application involves regular time audits. Track how you spend your hours for a week without trying to change anything. Just observe. Then ask, if I had only 6 months to live, which of these activities would I continue? Which would I eliminate? Which would I increase? This reveals the gap between your stated values and your actual time allocation. The goal isn't to become obsessed with productivity or eliminate all spontaneity. It's to ensure that your time use reflects your authentic choices rather than unconscious habits. You can choose to spend an afternoon reading fiction or watching movies, but choose it consciously because it serves your well-being rather than fall into it as avoidance. Time urgency, without stress, requires accepting that you cannot do everything. Every yes to one opportunity is a no to all other possibilities. This scarcity isn't limitation but liberation. It forces you to choose what matters most rather than trying to do everything mediocrely. Death awareness transforms time from abstract concept to precious resource. When you truly understand that your time is limited and unknown in duration, everything changes. Priorities clarify, relationships deepen, experiences become more vivid, decision-making improves, procrastination decreases, presence increases. The practice is simple but profound. Regularly remind yourself that this day will never return. These hours with these people in these circumstances are unique and irreplaceable. This recognition creates natural urgency without artificial stress, motivation without anxiety, focus without rigidity. Your time is your life. How you spend your hours determines who you become and what you contribute to the world. Make those choices consciously, not accidentally. Use time scarcity as motivation for authentic living rather than source of stress about productivity. This is how you honor the gift of finite existence. Block 18. Integration challenge making philosophy practical daily habit. The gap between philosophical understanding and practical application is where most wisdom dies. You can memorize Stoic principles, discuss them eloquently, and even teach them to others. But until they become automatic responses to daily challenges, they remain intellectual concepts rather than lived wisdom. This final section focuses on the crucial transition from knowing to being. Integration happens through what psychologists call overlearning, practicing new responses until they become more automatic than old patterns. This requires moving beyond reading about Stoicism to actively practicing it in real-world situations. Every interaction becomes an opportunity to apply philosophical principles. Every challenge becomes a chance to strengthen virtue. The process has 3 stages. First, conscious incompetence, recognizing the gap between your ideals and your actions. You know what wisdom looks like but find yourself reacting emotionally, making decisions based on fear, or falling into old patterns. This awareness is uncomfortable but necessary for growth. Second, conscious competence, catching yourself in the moment and choosing differently. You notice when you're about to complain and choose gratitude instead. You recognize when you're taking something personally and remember that others' behavior reflects their internal state, not your worth. You pause between trigger and response, creating space for wisdom. Third, unconscious competence. Virtuous responses become automatic. You naturally respond to criticism with curiosity rather than defensiveness. You automatically focus on what you can control rather than what you can't. You instinctively look for learning opportunities in setbacks rather than reasons to feel victimized. The key is choosing one principle at a time rather than trying to implement everything simultaneously. If you want to develop patience, spend a month focusing specifically on patient responses to frustration. If you want to build resilience, concentrate on reframing obstacles as opportunities. If you want to increase gratitude, practice appreciating what you have before pursuing what you want. Create implementation intentions, specific if, then plans that connect philosophical principles to daily situations. If someone criticizes me, then I'll pause and ask what I can learn from this feedback. If I feel anxious about outcomes, then I'll focus on what I can control right now. If I'm tempted to complain, then I'll find something to appreciate about the situation instead. Use environmental design to support philosophical practice. Place reminders of Stoic principles where you'll see them during challenging moments. Keep a journal for evening reflection. Set phone reminders for brief philosophical check-ins throughout the day. Surround yourself with people who support your growth rather than reinforce old patterns. The biggest obstacle to integration is perfectionism. You'll fail to apply principles consistently, especially under stress or pressure. This is normal and expected. The goal isn't perfect implementation but continuous improvement. Each time you catch yourself and choose differently, you're strengthening the neural pathways that support wisdom. Track your progress through specific behavioral metrics rather than general feelings. Count how many times you pause before reacting emotionally. Notice how often you redirect attention from uncontrollables to controllables. Observe how frequently you find learning opportunities in setbacks. These concrete measures reveal progress that might otherwise go unnoticed. Real-world practice requires starting with low-stakes situations before attempting high-pressure applications. Practice patience with minor irritations before expecting to maintain equanimity during major crises. Develop emotional regulation during calm moments before trying to implement it during intense stress. The transformation process often includes temporary discomfort. As you change your responses, relationships may shift. Some people might not support your growth because it challenges their own patterns. This resistance is normal and often temporary as you demonstrate the benefits of philosophical living through your actions. Integration accelerates through community. Find others who share your commitment to wisdom and virtue. Discuss practical applications of philosophical principles. Share challenges and successes. Learn from others' experiences. Philosophy was originally practiced in communities rather than isolation, and modern practitioners benefit from this ancient approach. The ultimate test of integration is crisis response. When facing significant challenges, health problems, relationship conflicts, career setbacks, or family emergencies, do you automatically apply Stoic principles, or do you revert to old patterns? True integration means maintaining philosophical perspective precisely when it's most difficult to do so. Remember that integration is a lifelong process, not a destination. Even Marcus Aurelius was working on his character development while writing his reflections. The goal isn't to achieve perfect wisdom, but to continuously apply philosophical principles to lived experience. Every day offers opportunities to practice virtue, develop resilience, and strengthen wisdom. Start today with one specific commitment. Choose a single Stoic principle and practice it for the next week. Notice when opportunities arise to apply it. Catch yourself when you forget and redirect without self-criticism. Celebrate small victories and learn from setbacks. This is how philosophy becomes life rather than just theory. These 18 principles aren't just ancient wisdom. They're your blueprint for cutting through modern distractions and building a life of genuine purpose. From disciplining desire to embracing mortality, from building inner citadels to serving others wisely, each practice transforms intellectual understanding into lived experience. Stoics didn't just study philosophy, they lived it under the most challenging circumstances imaginable: war, political turmoil, personal loss, and enormous responsibility. Your challenges may be different, but your opportunities for growth are identical. Every interaction tests your patience. Every setback offers chances to practice resilience. Every decision reveals your values. Every day provides opportunities to become the person you aspire to be rather than remaining who you've always been. The path forward requires choosing one principle and practicing it consistently until it becomes automatic. Then, choose another. Build wisdom gradually through daily application rather than expecting immediate transformation. Remember that even Marcus Aurelius was still working on his character development while ruling an empire and facing military campaigns.